blessings and welcome, Freedom Family, to this walk and talk. My name is Daniel Roquillo, and this is my way of sharing my journey, the spaces I'm moving through, the realizations I catch, the challenges I face, as we're all bound to face as we're moving along this beautiful path of freedom and awakening and expansion and transformation and all of that. So today I want to talk about practice, the concept, the idea of practice, and how it has been stated that the quality of our lives is dependent upon the practice that we're having. And by practice, I don't necessarily mean our meditation practice. I don't necessarily mean only, we do not want to confine our practice to just meditation and prayer, exercise, but we also want to include and incorporate, and we need to, and that's where this comes in. We need to incorporate what I call practicing the presence, that one of the pillars of freedom, which is where we find a way to sustain, to reclaim our sanity, not only when we're in meditation, not only when we are in prayer. I remember a long time ago, Eckhart Tolle was saying that he was speaking about meditation, and he was saying that having a powerful 30-minute meditation practice every morning, that's beautiful, but if we move deep into the nowness of this moment for 30 minutes and then forget about the nowness of this moment for the duration of the day, then perhaps that meditation practice is not sufficient. And as I'm moving through a space of beautiful expansion and moving into completely uncharted and unknown territory, my mind is racing. And I was out walking the other day and became aware of how much the mind was racing. That as I was out walking, I was awake for a few seconds, and then my mind went into fantasy land, and I became aware only a few minutes later, a few moments later, that I'd been sleepwalking again. And so I realized that I need to lean onto something. I need to find a way to reset the mind. I need to find a way to release my attachment to the incessantness of the thinkingness of the mind. And so as I was out walking, I made the choice to move into some kind of practice. And the moment I did that, the mind went completely blank. And I realized that out of all these beautiful practices and tools that I have in my life, that I have too many. It was like a smorgasbord. I had so many tools and practices to dive into, to lean into, that I couldn't think of one. And it got me realizing that I need to come back to basic. I mean, I do have a beautiful practice, and it has served me very well over the years. But as the saying goes, when life becomes intense, that's the time for us to intensify our practice. So we need to, when life becomes intense, we need to step up our game. We cannot lean on old structures in building the new structures, but the new structures need to be built on something solid. And if, as in my case, if the mind is not necessarily predominantly peaceful and still and silent, then that is a call for the practice to be expanded. And I used to have a number of go-to practices that it was just automatic, it was just habitual. From years of leaning into these practices and hours of leaning into these practices, I didn't really have to think about them, but when the mind began to race, these practices immediately just popped up, and I just automatically, like an autopilot, leaned into them. This is no longer the case. I'm realizing this is no longer the case. So as I became aware of this, I obviously made the choice to reaffirm, redeclare my go-to practices. And out of all of these practices, we have prayer, we have meditation, we have hanging out in high-minded fellowship, we have gratitude, we have affirmations, we have conscious breathing, mindfulness. There's so many practices that we can choose from. Praying for others, rejoicing, celebrating the good that is here now. But we're wise to have one or two or three go-to practices that we easily and readily can lean into. And the ones that I've chosen for myself as I'm moving through this space, as I'm moving through this expansion, is to come back to the breath. Because that's one of the things, that is why the practicing the presence pillar is one of the fundamental pillars of this freedom. We need to find a way to reattach ourselves, to break free from the attachment, to break free from being hijacked by the content of the mind. And the most powerful ways that I know to do that on a moment-to-moment basis is to come back to the breath. Just being with the breath, being very mindful, as in this now moment. We can take a breath, let our attention stay with the breath. It doesn't mean that the mind instantly goes quiet. It doesn't even mean that the mind goes quiet, but it means that as we are turning our attention toward the breath is always here now. The mind is always moving along the linearity of time, from past to present to future to past to present to future, and back and forth and back and forth. But the breath is always here. It is always now. So just being with the breath. And we can be with the breath when talking to someone. We can be with the breath when doing work. We can be with the breath when driving. There is no moment when being with the breath is an obstruction. There is no moment when being with the breath does not serve us. But being with the breath allows us to move through life with expanded, increasing clarity. It allows us to move through life, even in turmoil, we can be in peace. Like, I don't know if you saw it, but that behind me, there's a beautiful oak tree. And it has been standing there for hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't know how old it is, but because of its size, it has to have a number of years under its belt. And as you may have heard from these walks and talks, these fields, they get kind of windy. And so this oak tree has been standing there for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's been withstanding wind. There's a lake behind me. So it's been withstanding floods, and then there's been lightning, and there's been thunder, and there's been hailstorms, and there's been drought even. And it is still here. And the reason that it is here is because its roots run so deep into the ground. And that to us is to me is a beautiful reminder that I need to have my present roots. I need to build my presence muscles so strong that even when the mind is incessant, even when there is intensity in the mind and in life, I can still be in peace. I can still be the peace. I don't have to be moved. I don't have to be pulled. I don't have to be tossed by the fluctuations of the mind and wherever the attention goes. So being with the breath is such a powerful practice that allows me to be present, to be mindful, to be in peace even when the mind is racing. So that's my number one go-to practice, and it has been. I don't know if I've necessarily lost it or if it's just being called to be expanded. Because it has been my practice for so long, and it has served me for so long, and it has served me so beautifully and powerfully. But now it is not as powerful anymore. So I'm being called to expand that. I'm being called to intensify that practice. And once I have come back to the breath, the other go-to practice that I'm leaning into is having what I call a casual conversation with God. And that simply means that just as I'm having a conversation now with the camera and with you all, I lean into spirit. I lean into God. I usually just go, hey God, this is me, and then I just go on. I don't have to say anything in particular, but just establishing that conscious connection with the divine. Seek the kingdom of God first, as it is stated somewhere in scripture, I believe. To have that conscious connection allows me to get out of the mind. It allows me to get out of the sense that I need to make it happen. It allows me to get out of the sense that of separation and limitation and lack and scarcity. Because this loving presence that is all there is, it is all there is. Look at these fields. I mean, there is abundance everywhere. Look at nature. Nothing in nature is making anything happen, and yet it is happening so beautifully. I mean, the sun, it is not making itself shine, it is just shining. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a family of deers behind me, and they are actually grazing and with their newborns on that field, and they are not making any of it happen. So it is, while it is perhaps normal for us, and I know that this is one of the biggest challenges for me, to get out of the sense, to release the sense that I need to make it happen. And having that conscious connection, it keeps the mind occupied. If I'm having a conversation with God, the mind cannot venture into the future. The mind cannot venture into lack. The mind cannot venture into trying to figure out anything. And also it allows for peace to emerge from within, because when I'm having that conversation, there's nothing for me to do. There's nothing I need to do. It immediately more or less moves me into the feeling tone that all is well. So that's the second practice that I have now dubbed my go-to practice. And the third practice that I've chosen is to bless others or pray for others. And that also facilitates, when I wish others well, it takes the mind off of me and my life and the conditions and the circumstances and the challenges that I'm facing. So it allows for the mind, for the attention to go into being of service instead. And obviously, whenever we are of service, whenever we give, we get from the satisfaction, from the joy of giving. And then obviously the sacred laws, they reciprocate that giving, because whenever we are in the mode of giving, we give from a space of having more than enough. So it soothes the mind to bless others, to wish others well, to wish them happiness, to wish them health, to wish them abundance, to wish them love, to wish them whatever comes to mind and whoever comes to mind. So yesterday I was actually in town, and I was walking down the street, and I was just blessing everyone I saw, everyone I met on the road as I was driving. I was just blessing them. I didn't even know them, but just wishing them well and wishing them happiness and joy and harmony and wholeness and love in their lives, abundance. It is yet another beautiful tool to ease the mind, to still the mind in a very powerful way. And we need to, just as we're breathing regularly, we need to have a practice that is consistent and regular. Having a practice like the body left to itself, it doesn't take one big breath, one deep breath, and holds it for as long as possible and then releases it to take another deep breath. But there's a balance, there's a beautiful flow in the breathing, and that's how we want to live with our practices, a continuous practice. There's a beautiful saying or statement that goes that we want to be a living, moving, walking prayer. And that does not mean that we're in prayer 24/7, but it means that we are in that prayerful state. It means that we are in that state where we have the feeling tone, the inner knowing that all is well. When we are trusting the invisible more than we're trusting the visible. When we are in the knowing that all of our needs are met, that everything is working for our highest good, that something wonderful is always happening, you know. So we need to establish a deep and profound practice, because it is the practice that allows us to stay sane. It is the practice that allows us to remain in peace even when the world is topsy-turvy and our lives are topsy-turvy. So I just wanted to speak into that as much as a reminder to myself, as perhaps an offering of inspiration to anyone tuning in, listening, that we need to absolutely establish a go-to practice and make it habitual as possible, so that we are living our practice. We're not moving into it from time to time, but we are living it. We are living embodiments of that practice. And obviously, and here's a little cat. He's called the Prince. And obviously, he's coming to greet us. And obviously, when we are in that practice, hello, want to say hi? Here he is. Hi. And yeah, who is that? Yeah, who is that? And cats, they are such masters at this. They are Zen masters. They do not for a second contemplate what has been. They do not for a second contemplate what might be. But they are so fully present in this now moment, just being with that which is, in such a beautiful way. So I want to emulate not only the Prince, but all cats, and I want to emulate nature to the best of my ability, because that's, if we look at nature, there's only peace in nature. If we look at nature, there's only harmony, there's only celebration, there's only rejoicing in nature. So nature obviously is doing something very right, not trying to make it happen, not moving faster and faster and faster, but it is just in that beautiful space of allowing that which is emerging to emerge at its own pace, trusting that all is well, that something wonderful is always happening, and that everything is working for the highest good. So that's our invitation for today, to lean into our practices, to cultivate, to pick our go-to practices, 1 to 3 practices that we begin to cultivate, that we begin to incorporate in our daily lives, not only in the morning, not only in the evening, but during the day, throughout the day, constantly, regularly, consistently, so that we may remain sane, so that we may stay in a high vibration, so that we may stay expanded even when the world is contracting. So that was it for today. Until we meet again, absolutely bless our days and our ways, knowing that all is well, that something wonderful is happening, that everything is working for the highest good. So from me and the Prince, or Prille, as he's called in Swedish, much love, many blessings. Namaste.